I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Chainsaw Man. I think that my main gripes are that people made it seem like the story was the best thing since sliced bread. But when I actually watched the series, I won't lie, I was pretty disappointed. My main concern was that Chainsaw Man was being looked in too deeply. On the surface, the series just seems like fun tomfoolery with a ragtag group of demons. I saw people citing themes of abuse, manipulation, and ignorance, but honestly, none of these themes stuck out to me. Like, if you enjoy the series because of that, don't let me ruin your fun, but Chainsaw Man from a writing standpoint just wasn't it for me. But what do I know, right? I'm just a little PNG man who makes YouTube videos, right? I think people regard Fujimoto as one of the best modern Shonen Jump authors, not just for Chainsaw Man either. He has other one-shots like Just Listen to the Song, Fire Punch, and the film we're checking out today, Look Back. This is one of the works I've heard about for the longest and wanted to see if this will help me understand Fujimoto's writing better. But before we keep going, subscribe to the channel and don't look back. And if you want more content, check out the second channel where we look back. I don't know. Look Back is a one-shot that came out in 2021. If you don't know what a one-shot is, it's basically a trial run of a manga, and if it's well received, publishers will pick it up to become a full series. But in this case, I think the story is pretty centered around the fact that this is a one-shot, so that means nothing more is coming out of it. This manga ended up getting a film adaptation, which premiered in June of 2024. But let's get into it and see what this film is about, and if it's even worth the watch. This film starts us off with a little girl who looks to be struggling with drawing. It's an art strip she made, and the film ends up shifting into that style. It ends up being kinda morbid, but the comic was still super funny. This was for the school's paper, and we soon find out that this was made by the talented Fujimoto. The class ends up gushing over how well the comic is made and how she's so good at everything. Like, okay, relax, the glazing is insane.
All you do?
The teacher asks if she could give one of her strips to a kid next door named Fujimoto. She agrees pompously and goes on about how it's a you either have it or you don't type of thing. But then the next day, she sees the paper with the super detailed drawings. Everyone sees the paper, and her shit is immediately called mid. I lie to you not.
The strip looks kinda mid compared to Kyomochi's stuff. I'm just saying.
But we can see how much this shakes Fujimoto's world up. She starts thinking about all the other people who told her drawings were amazing, or how she could be a professional. But this one little comment took her all out of whack. Honestly, I love this. I think it's a perfect depiction of someone losing confidence. I go through this all the time if we're being completely honest. People will tell you one thing for so long, like, oh, you do this so well. And once that negative comment rolls around, you fixate on it. It completely negates all the other positive reinforcement you've gotten. There's been so many times where I've been told, oh, you make great videos. And then someone I know will come around and say it's cringe or say it's bad. It doesn't feel good in the slightest. Like, were all those people lying to me? But instead of letting this defeat her, Fujimoto decides to dedicate herself to drawing. And I like this too. At the end of the day, you have to just keep persisting, especially if it's something you love and care about. 2 years go by and she's still drawing. One of her classmates tells her to basically chill out with the drawing and enjoy life a little bit. Her grades are falling, she's getting less social, and no matter how much she tries, she can't catch up to Fujimoto. This is the breaking point. She finally stops and takes a break. The teacher again asks Fujimoto to take Fujimoto's diploma to her house. When she gets there, she sees nothing but notebooks lined up in the hallway. She draws a comic strip that actually lands under the door of our hermit. This makes her rush out the house, and this is where she finds out that the girl who's so cracked at drawing is a huge fan of Fujimoto. Fujimoto realizes this and takes the nonchalant route. She knew what she was doing, and she's real giddy when she realizes that she inspired this girl. She gets home and gets back to drawing. Now, Fujimoto is hanging out with Fujimoto as they make this new manga. From the looks of it, they won the manga contest, and I think it would have been very easy to make Fujimoto the stuck-up asshole after putting her in this situation, but she genuinely treats Fujimoto like a friend, and I really appreciate that. The girls are now older and published 7 one-shots before they even finished high school. I think I was playing Overwatch in high school. Good times. But now we see that Kiyomoto wants to go to an art school, while Fujino wants to continue working on manga. Instead of encouraging her, she puts down her friend, saying stuff like, "You won't be able to handle it, and you need me." At this moment, you can see all of it come down, and it feels like an instant. Both girls have different reasons for being artists, and now that they're grown, they can see the world differently, and the frictions start popping up. They kind of switch places almost. In the beginning, Fujino just wanted to make manga for fun. She felt like she could do anything, even if it wasn't drawing, while Kiyomoto was doing it solely for the prospect of being something greater, wanting to be exactly like her inspiration. Now, Fujino wants to stick to manga as a career, while her friend simply just wants to be a better artist for her own sake. This is honestly so good. Now that the concept of making manga forever is in jeopardy, she deals with it in the only way she knows how, by telling her friend that she's not good enough. Because in Kiyomoto's mind, she is the pinnacle, so why not take advantage of that? We fast forward a couple more years and there's a news broadcast playing. There was a man in a college campus with a pickaxe who killed people. One of the people ended up being Kiyomoto. Now before we keep going, there's a little bit of context I found really interesting, so I figured I would share. Apparently the manga describes this scene a bit differently. Unlike the film, the man who attacks the university was hearing voices, which if you couldn't connect the dots, it's a not so subtle nod to schizophrenia. So in order not to stigmatize the mental illness, they changed it to the guy having no known motives. Apparently, this event closely resembles the Kyoto animation incident from 2019. In this real-life event, saw a man who didn't work at the studio claiming that people there plagiarized his work. But this manga came out in 2021, so I could definitely see how this came off as insensitive. But at least, now you know. Quick, I need something funny to lighten the mood. Getting back to the film, we see Fujino not handling this very well. She goes through her friend's old stuff and sees the comic strip she made on the day they met. Fujino blames herself and her art for all this even happening. Then we see a reality where Fujino and Kiyomoto never met up until they're grown. The same interaction happens where Kiyomoto geeks about seeing her idol and goes home to make a comic strip. It ends up flying back to our Fujino and she realizes why she draws in the first place. She draws to inspire. So that's what she continues doing. Drawing. And the movie finishes there. I think this is a great film. Not only is it short and sweet, but the narrative is so easy to follow along with. I think there are a lot of themes you can point out in this film, but I think the main one is understanding how you perceive yourself and how others may perceive you in a completely different way. We see Fujino at the very beginning being threatened by an artist that doesn't even come to school. Her whole persona was built up, and until that day, she was broken instantly. But the only reason the other person started making detailed art was because of her work. When we see the two girls grow up, Fujino doesn't like the idea of Kiyomoto leaving to go to school. Maybe it's a feeling of inadequacy, that she couldn't do any of this without her friend. So now that she's leaving, how is she going to proceed? What if the work starts to suffer because of this? On the opposite end, Kiyomoto sees her as a hero basically, someone she can rely on no matter what. Eventually, it was time for her to stop relying on Fujino because what if she starts resenting her for it? Kiyomoto didn't see this as threatening because she already saw Fujino's work as amazing. So with or without her, she thought everything would have been fine regardless. Another theme I thought I saw was pressure and self-doubt. Of course I talked about the mean comment Fujino got, but we see her practice go from hopeful to something that's a bit more depressing. Eventually, all she did was draw, barely even socializing, and it got to a point where people were questioning if she even liked it. I think it's very easy to get caught up in a passion, but if you work yourself too thin, you end up becoming a perfectionist, and that's never going to end well. Honestly, you hear it all the time, but you're your own biggest critic, and you have to regulate how much you're doing. We see those highs that Fujino goes through, but then the lows are really low for her too. You want to get to a point where those peaks and lows feel manageable, you know? But other than that, I feel like this movie could have been an allegory for how Fujimoto feels about his own work. Maybe he feels like someone will always be better than him, but at the same time, You probably can't even count how many people he's inspired through his own work. Maybe he'll always have that sense of imposter syndrome, no matter how many series get picked up or how many volumes sell. Not only was this film thought-provoking, it was gorgeous. I'm not sure if some of the scenes were rotoscope, but if not, they truly look spectacular. From the different colors, from scene to scene, to the settings, it was just a joy to look at. I think this film is definitely a must-watch. You can definitely tell that Fujimoto draws his inspirations from reality. A lot of his work is interpreted usually with some sort of consensus, so it's really nice to see that these messages are so clearly conveyed, but not on the nose. I think that's something I took away from Chainsaw Man, kind of writing it off as some fun, average shonen series. But maybe I need to take a look back at Chainsaw Man to understand it a bit better. I think this film was amazing, and after watching it, I definitely think that Fujimoto is worthy of his recent praise with all his series. But Chainsaw Man's still freaky as hell, like come on.